Hello everyone, Ben here, and sorry about that quick pause. I wasn't sure if my computer started recording. Um, so we're going to be looking at the primary votes from the territories and also the interesting general election vote from Guam. Because I may start including the territories in some of my presidential forecasts and election nights. Especially if I decide to go forward and do a 2024 or even 2028, but that may be the rare occasion that I decide to do one of those. And if I do, I'll explain the how the electoral votes get allocated in those situations, because that's actually very interesting. Because up until reapportionment, I'll go ahead and explain this now. So when a new U.S. state gets added, their population is taken from the previous census, is factored in, and they get apportioned the same, the same number of congressional seats that they would have gotten if, based off of how many people they have. So, for example, Puerto Rico would probably get 5 congressional seats, though maybe 4. I'm not entirely sure which. But in 2020, when seats get reapportioned, this changes because due to the way Congress works, the House of Representatives is currently limited or capped at 435 seats. So those seats would then be distributed accordingly, and they would probably lose a seat. Because, again, it goes basically most populous, going on down the line, so long as there are enough people to fill out those seats, right? So, anyway, because every state gets at least 1 seat. So they probably go down to either 4 or 3 congressional seats. So, yeah. Now for this, I'm going to be combining the Pacific Islands into 1 state, which has about 270,000 people, which would make it by far the smallest if it wasn't for the fact that I am also going to include the U.S. Virgin Islands. Which would make them the smallest state. And the reason why I'm doing this for all the territories and not just Puerto Rico is because I extremely, extremely doubt Congress is going to allow only 1 state at a time in from now. It's kind of like what happened in the 1800s when they only allowed in new states if they could make a free state and a slave state. For example, when Texas came in, people were really upset that they didn't allow in a free state with Texas. Or maybe, yeah, I don't think. But that was part of the Missouri Compromise, was Missouri would be admitted into the United States as a slave state, but Maine would be created as a state from part of Massachusetts. Yeah, and this happened. States would come in pairs, or reasonably close to pairs, 1 slave, 1 free. So I think from now on, you're going to see new states added based off of their political affiliation. So they're only going to allow in states that they think are likely to vote, say, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat state. And you'll get to see where I'm going to put these states and whether or not I'll list them, as whatever. So if we look at Puerto Rico, we look in the primaries, and just looking off of the primary votes, that's about 130,000. And the Democrats are taking up about, I'm trying to think about the percentages here. So we're going to say the Republican, 4 over 13, that reduces to a little bit less than 4 over 10. So I'd say like 37% to 63% for the Democrats. However, if we look at the, wow, that's embarrassing. That is really embarrassing. But if we look at the 2012 Republican primary, there's no primary in 2012 in Puerto Rico, or if there was, I can't find any data on it. We realize that, hey, the Republicans got the total number of votes cast in this primary. But if we go to the, really? It's interesting. Let's go to the Democrat primary. We find that they got absolutely demolished by the Democrats, but I think that's just coincidental. And if you listen, by the way, the Republican and Democrat parties don't actually run in Puerto Rico. They have two parties, one that caucuses mainly or is considered an affiliate of the Democrats, and one that, at least according to their Puerto Rico's governor, who is a member of the other party, the one that I'm kind of talking about, he says that a large portion of the party he's part of, aligns with the Republicans, even though he is a Democrat when it comes to national politics. And he says that it would be a swing state if it were to, if Puerto Rico became the 51st state, is that Puerto Rico would be a swing state. However, based off of my analysis, the most generous I can give is that it would be a Democrat swing state, probably a likely Democrat swing state, at best for the Republicans. So, yeah, there's that. And I will probably classify it as likely Democrat for the future, just because I'm going to trust somebody who's actually in Puerto Rico and understands the political climate of Puerto Rico, aka their governor, because he can win elections there. But also looking at the data, I think that's a bit generous to say it would be a true swing state. It would definitely favor the Democrats most of the time. It'd be a good comparison would probably be in New Mexico. I think if we're going to be comparing it to states that are already in the union when it comes to how they vote, it would probably be like in New Mexico or maybe in Oregon. I think Oregon would compare extreme. Yeah, we'll go ahead and call it like an Oregon. Anyway, this one is okay. So we're going to go to Guam, which holds a straw poll for the general election. And Guam actually participated in, and Guam does kind of a straw poll for president, which Hillary won pretty handedly. Though, as we can see, that's not a lot compared to Guam's population of about 160,000. Actually, it's closer to 170,000. That's not a lot of people voting. So we don't actually know, and it's also considered the most conservative of the territories. However, we don't have vote totals from the primaries. But we do know they have voted for that 2016 was the first time their straw poll didn't get aligned with the winner of the election. Though they did get the winner of the popular vote. That means they voted for Bush twice, they voted for Obama twice, they voted for H.W. Clinton twice, and Reagan twice, since they started doing it in 1980. And okay, that's a decent amount of votes in the primary there, or in their case, caucus. But my thinking is that Puerto Rico, due to its reputation, I think it would be a Republican-leaning swing, or not Puerto Rico, I'm sorry, Guam would be a Republican-leaning swing state, simply because if we look at their state level, or not state, but territory level government, they have only one Democrat in elected office. So I think that is enough for me to classify them as a Republican-leaning swing state, especially considering their history in presidential elections. Because again, they do vote, though it's a very small percentage of the population, and they tend to get the winner right. Even in competitive elections, I think this was, and again, this was the only exception to the rule. So I would classify Guam as Republican-leaning, but we got to move on to the other two territories I'm going to be combining with Guam in order to make what I'm going to call Samoa and the Marianas, for when I actually include them in states. And looking at American Samoa, again, we don't have Republican votes from the primaries, but we also don't have a lot from the Democrat primaries. I looked at it, and it seemed American Samoa tends to be a little more it tends to be more Democrat, but I'm not sure if it would be enough to offset Guam, which is, of course, almost actually it is 3 times as large. It's almost, it's about three and a third times as large as Samoa. So that means Samoa would be outvoted significantly, but I'm also going to combine it with the U.S. Virgin, not the U.S. Virgin Islands, sorry, sorry about that, the Northern Marianas Islands, which, well, in the primaries, the Republicans outvoted the Democrats, but they have a Republican governor, it seems. Let's actually open up his page just to make sure. Yeah, Republican governor. And let's actually pull him up. Yep, Republican. So the Northern Marianas Islands seem to also be conservative, and they have a few, I think they have 1 or 2 Democrats, I'm not sure. So I would classify Samoa and the Marianas as a likely Republican, essentially the Republican version of Puerto Rico, but smaller. They'd only have 3 electoral votes regardless of apportionment. They're so small. They'd be the smallest state if not for the U.S. Virgin Islands, which, interestingly enough, 65% of their Republicans didn't vote for, who actually voted in the primaries, voted for no one. Yeah. But all Republican voters outvoted the Democrats, and based off of the primary information I can find, and I really can't find anything else about it, I can't even find 2012 no matter where I go. Based off of the primary votes, and considering the size of the Northern Marianas Islands, which is which is a little bit under 100, actually it's over 100,000, I'm sorry about that, it's a little over 100,000, I have to consider the Northern Marianas Islands a true swing state based off of how close the primaries were. So I will do that, provided I include it. Republicans would probably make the argument that they want to include a true swing state as well. though who knows? Or Republicans could try and make the argument that the northern parts of California, and I may do an analysis of that because I may include that if I include Puerto Rico as Northern California. But I think I would just do it by offsetting by including territories. So I would consider the U.S. Virgin Islands as a state to be a swing state, and that is fairly consistent with who's actually in the U.S. Virgin Islands government. Yeah, exactly. Their governor is an independent, their lieutenant governor is an independent, and their delegate is a Democrat. And that's really all I can find on them. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any comments, questions, criticisms, go ahead and put them in the comments below. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing a video on the 39 Democrats, or 39 people who might run for the Democrat nomination in 2020. Anyway, have a nice day.